everybody, I'm Carla the Alberta girl. Welcome to my channel today, everybody. Today I wanted to talk to you about glass lids and glass lid canning and kind of why we need to be going back to a vintage technology. And the biggest reason, of course, aside from, things like the environmental impact and the cost of them, is the simple fact that this glass lid it's just so much better. This lid is going to last indefinitely, and I mean, it's roughed up. You can definitely see the age on it. You can see the age there. It's, kind of scratched up and whatever, but you know what? This lid has served its purpose in life, and it's definitely been, quite a few years that it's been in existence. So why go back to it when you can get snap lids? And twofold. Obviously, with the Bernardin announcement a few weeks ago that they are ceasing gem lid manufacturing, there's just no point. I mean, you can continue to use your gem jars, but if you're not going to have a lid for them, what are you going to do? 2 years ago, I decided I was going to teach myself how to use glass lids. And this is what I used as a kid. This is what I helped my baba with. This is how my mom canned. This is what my baba used to can. And while I do have a stockpile of gem lids on hand, those lids are going to be used and reused again for certain things like oven canning, vacuum canning, that kind of thing, where I still haven't been able to figure out a great foolproof way to doing it with a glass lid. Now, having said that, a lot of people get really kind of, oh, well, they're dangerous and they don't work, and how do you know if they've sealed? And there's many, many, many different ways to tell a glass lid sealed. But to start with, there's really no difference between this and a snap lid, except that this is reusable indefinitely. And a snap lid, if you're going to be reusing, maybe 3 to 5 times, depending on how careful you are to remove them. You're also having to keep in consideration the size of the rubber sealant or the rubber component on a snap lid. The last few years, they have been questionable, I guess one could say. And I've discovered too, I had a lot more failures with the more modern and more recent lids from the gem. Just because it's gotten so much smaller and narrower. So I've just decided, you know what, I'm going to start using glass lids for a couple of different reasons. For me, I like paying $2 for a dozen gaskets. I also like that I can get glass lids and I'm not constantly on the hunt. I mean, this year I think a dozen snap lids is almost $6 after taxes. And that works out to 50 cents a lid that you are literally throwing in the trash. And to me, that's just not okay. In the meantime, we all need to know how to use them properly. And I'm going to show you in this video how to can water using glass lids. I'm just using water simply because that's what I have handy, and because I just want to get a few more of these half-gallon jars onto the shelf full of water, because we just don't know what the future is going to hold. So the first step that you're going to want to do with canning with glass lids, and this is going to be the same regardless of the brand of glass lid, the vintage of glass lid, if you're using antique, if you're using my new modern ones, it's going to be the same procedure. And we've actually requested the same glass of the lids. So having said that, let's get started with canning water. And again, it's just what I have handy. You can use whatever size. I'm using the half-gallon jars, and the lids are the same regardless of the volume of jar. So you're going to take and get a rubber gasket, and you can reuse these rubber gaskets. I mean, they say put a fresh one on every time, but as long as the gasket is still, flexible and pliable, and it's you know, not cracking and falling apart, feel free to reuse it as many times as you like. And then you're just gonna, literally, you're just going to put it around just like that. You're just gonna lay it on, and it's going to sit flush with the upper part of the lid. Now, if you put it on backwards, you'll see what I mean. It won't sit quite as flush. Can you see that okay? Yeah, there you go. It's just a teeny tiny little gap in there. It still will work. Do not worry about that. But I like to do it like this. You can see the little bit of, there's no gap in there. It's just a really nice fit. And that's what we're gonna do. Then we're gonna take and put this lid. This is a 2-quart jar or a half a gallon jar. And we're just, like I said, just gonna put the lid gasket on the lid like so. Just like that. You're gonna take your tall band or screw band or ring, whatever you wanna call it. And it's just gonna go into a big pot here. We're gonna get some water boiling. I've got my little puppy on the floor here, underfoot. There we go. So this one is the only kind of different one, and you can tell that it's just from where it was manufactured is why it's different. You can just see how it was cast. This one in my right hand is a little bit older than this one in my left hand. This is probably from the 1930s, 1920s. This is from probably the late 1960s, early 1970s. And it's just the style of how it drops at the bottom. Like I was saying, this is a video I've wanted to make for a while now, just because I am so excited to be bringing back glass lids and glass lid canning. Like I said, you know, it's one of those things where we really do need to be getting back into, I don't want to say vintage technology, but we need to start really being a lot more self-reliant and independent, especially with everything that's going on in Canada right now. We absolutely need to be more self-reliant and less dependent on government. So there we go, that's done. And then the next thing that we're going to do that's different from a snap lid is we are going to scald these lids here. So all we're going to do is leave these lids in here like so, and we're going to add some boiling water, and we're just going to scald them, and then we're going to bring this pot of lids up to a boil. Now while we do that, I'm just going to get the jars ready. I already know my jars are clean and sanitary because they're going to be going into a pressure canner. I don't need to sterilize them, and in fact, I really just need to use room temperature water and a cold canner, so we don't even want that extra little bit of thermal shock. They are sanitary, which is different from sterilized, and we are going to sterilize the lids. That's just different, and the scalding also helps with the gaskets to soften up and become malleable enough so that they seal correctly. So I'm just going to fill up my jars really quick. And we're just going to fill them up to roughly where the neck, this is the neck of the jar here, this is the shoulder, and right here we're going to fill it to where that connection meets. So we'll just add a little bit more here. There we go. And I'm just going to do the rest of these jars. Now that we've got that all filled up, We've got those all filled up. I'm just gonna go grab a paper towel. We're gonna give the rims a quick wipe down. So all I'm gonna do is just take a paper towel and I'm just gonna give it a quick wipe. Now, obviously this is, just water, right? But it's a good habit to get into. It's also a great way to feel your jars and, like there's a chip here. I don't know if you can see it. It's not a chip. No. Oh, it is too a chip. Oh, that is a chip. Okay, well, we're going to try anyways and see if it seals. This jar may not seal because of that chip there. And if it doesn't, then it's garbage. Dispose of your jars when they're no use. You can also put it into a no good pile. Sometimes that's what I'll do, is put it into a no good pile, mark it, and then that will be for, apothecary kind of uses. So for storing, things like nails or sewing stuff or whatever, right? And then that's all you do. Now, the water has boiled, and all we're going to do here next is just pour the water in just like that. You want it high enough that it's going to actually cover the water, high enough that it's going to actually cover the lids all together. Full cover. You may want to add an additional pot of boiling water. I'm going to, for sure, come to a boil here. In the meantime, while that's getting going, we're going to turn the heat on to this element onto high. Again, like I said, you really want these rings boiled for a good 15 minutes. That's going to sterilize them, sanitize them, get them all nice and ready for canning, but especially the rubber gaskets, which are the most critical part of this right now. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, one thing I did forget to mention is you are going to want to just lift them up a little bit, and there's a little bit of air trapped underneath them. You'll definitely want to get that out from underneath. Kind of burping them, I guess you could call it. And again, I'm doing this one-handed, so I beg your forgiveness. And we're just, like I said, we're going to let that boil for 15 minutes. Okay, we're back. It's been about 15 minutes. And this is why you can see where all of that water is gone. You need it at a rolling boil. And that's just going to, like I said, sanitize and sterilize and get everything ready to can. Just some fancy regular tongs. Put a jar down, just like that. And all you're going to do is take a lid out of... Let's do this first. You're just going to take a lid out of the pot, and you're just going to give it a little bit of a shake, get all that excess water out. There we go. And I'm just going to put everything down and plunk it on. You want to be careful, but you do want it to just sit there, and then you're just going to tighten the ring down, just like that. 3 fingers tight, and then a quarter, like to the point of no resistance, and then about a 1/4 inch, but only using 3 fingers. So then that's done. And we're going to put it into the canner now. Okay. So then all we're going to do is put it into our big pot, our big canner, and we're going to do the rest just like that. There we go. Okay. So the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to fill our canner with water. And read your instructions. Everybody's canner is different for the amount of water you're going to need in it. I use 3 quarts, so we'll put 3 in. And this makes 3. If I had room for a fifth, I would put a fifth jar in here. So just taking a quick look, you can see it's just the jars are in neat and tidy, cold water in the pot, and we're just going to add the lid next. So let's do that really quick. Okay, we're just going to add the lid. Like so. Okay, where are we? There we go. And center it on our burner, and then we're going to turn the heat all the way up. This is water, so I'm not terribly concerned with a whole lot of anything right now. I do want it on high. I do need this to get up to temp as quick as possible. And then we are just going to, because Edmonton is whatever the height is, we just put on a 10-pound pressure regulator weight. And that's all we're going to do. So I will bring you back. We're going to let it vent for 10 minutes and then we'll do the next step. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, I had the camera on the charger. You can just hear how it's venting. It's gonna vent for 10 minutes. It's got a couple of minutes left, but the best way to gauge if it's ready to go is hold your hand about 6 or 8 inches above the petcock, which is what this is, and you're just gonna feel that nice steam coming off. Right? It's gonna be nice and hot, great way to keep your hands warm. It's gonna shoot a little bit of steam. Don't worry about it, but you're gonna vent it for 10 whole minutes. Oh. So we've gone ahead and dropped it on. I thought I was recording, my bad. All you do is drop it on, it's not a big deal. It's only been on for a minute. And all you're gonna do literally is wait until it starts rocking away and then you're done. Just like this, and then we're just gonna set the timer for 30 minutes. Now, this is a bit of overkill for water. I'm not really worried. So now that it's rocking, we've set the timer. The next thing we're gonna do is turn our heat down. Now, I know my stove, and this is about where my stove, that's happy spot is. Basically, you need the heat now. It's at pressure. You need enough heat to keep it at pressure, but not so much that you're boiling the water away. Okay? So we're just gonna let this sit for the next half hour. Okay, it's been a half an hour and we're just going to turn off the heat. I normally have a tea towel set down here, so I'm just gonna go grab that right now. But now that the heat's off, this is just fine. The tea towel here, or towel rather, is just to protect the counter. And you're just going to take your off. And we're just going to let it sit for the next 30 minutes again. Till it comes down to pressure. Okay, we're back. I've just taken off the pressure regulator. The little nipple has fallen on the safety. And we're just going to take the lid off. This is really difficult doing it one-handed, but I will figure it out. It's not going to work. I'm going to put the camera down. Remember, you want to open it away from you. Okay. Okay, so then we're just going to take... So now what we're going to do is take our jar lifters and our trusty tea towel, and we're just going to lift the jar out. Now these are really heavy, so I'm always a little more cautious with them. And you can just see, there we go. So now what we're going to do is tighten it down as tight as we can get it. And I mean tight. And that is it. And you're just going to do that with all of them. And you're going to notice some of the jars will start to, or continue to have little bubbles. That is one of the signs that it's sealing and that it's a good seal. If you need to use more than one tea towel, go right ahead. That works just fine as well. But again, you do need to be very careful when you're doing this. Sweet love of, man, that's hot. Okay. Now, there's just a few different ways you can do this. I like to lift them, but not everybody does. I'll just put that out to the side. There we go. Oops, last one. Now, another reason you want to do water is when you're canning with Presto, for example. Presto uses a secondary gasket in the lid. There we go. That is it. That is really the last so-called different step. You really need to tighten these lids down, and you can do it. Now, you'll notice that they're still bubbling. And that is one very good sign that everything is working well. Okay? But anyway, sorry. One thing with boiling water, canning water like this is in the lid, there is a gasket. I'll just show you here. So this gasket, when you change it out, you're going to want to oil it really, really well. And I always run a canner load to test it to make sure that it's going to be oiled properly. And it's just, cheap, just like canola oil or something. You don't need anything fancy. No, if that's what you got, that's what you got. But you don't need anything fancy. And that's all you do. You just oil it up. I run a tester load. The first load of the season, I always run a tester load. If you want to try something new, whatever you're doing, I always run a canner of water just because. And because it's just me, it's a lot handier for me to use up these half-gallon jars. And to give you an idea of the size difference, here you go. So in my hand is a 1 quart, and the big jar with the water is a 2 quart. So roughly 1 liter versus 2 liters. It just makes more sense to me to use these up with water, because nothing I can will, doesn't make sense for me to use a full 2 quart jar or half-gallon jar. So that is how you use glass lids. I'm sorry I couldn't really give you a better shot of me getting these lids down, but that's the only major difference between snap lid canning and glass lid canning. You're going to leave these jars, like always, for 24 hours to let them cool. In about 4 hours, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these rings down again, just when they're safe to touch. And that's another sign that that they're going to seal correctly. As the vacuum is formed, it's going to draw down, and it's going to pull the lid with the gasket, and it's going to draw it down. That drawdown means that this lid, or the ring, pardon me, is going to be loose. So you just want to give it another crank and you'll be good to go. And, like I said, this is a really great way to use vintage technology with modern techniques. And it's going to be the same like if you had a snap lid. You're going to let them cool for 24 hours. At the end of 24 hours, we'll come back and I'll show you. You're just going to take the rings off. Now, again, these have been in water, so I'm not terribly concerned about washing the jars. But the one final test we're going to do is the lid test. And you're literally going to pick it up like any other jar that you're going to test. with a snap lid, right? And I'll show you that tomorrow when these are nice and cool and ready to be sent downstairs. But the only difference is in the old days, they encouraged you to store them with the rings on. And we now know that that's a way that, it's just for a bad seal. If there's a bad seal, it's going to get caught much quicker without the ring versus with the ring. And again, personal preference. If you choose to do it, that is your choice, your kitchen, your house, your rules. My kitchen, my house, my rules. And because this is how I do it, this is how I am teaching you to do it. By all means, I believe that that's a much safer option. And yeah, so we'll see you tomorrow with these cans, or with these jars. Okay, everybody, we are back. I've gone ahead and taken this ring off, and it's been about, I don't know, about 18 hours since these came out of the canner. And one big concern, this is the final test, if you will, to show that you have a good seal. And that is that you can lift the jar by the lid. Now, I'm not sure again why my camera doesn't focus, but there you go. This is a 2-quart or a half gallon, which is roughly 2 liters. So this is about 2 kilograms worth of water. I mean, it's a little less. That's about 4 pounds. And this lid is holding it just fine. I'm going to set the camera down here so you can see me opening it. The next sign, if you will, that it's sealed well is that the rings, are a little tricky to remove. And the reason that they are a little tricky to remove, you may be able to see this. So here's where the lid ends and the rubber gasket is showing. And I just can't get a good focus on it, and I am sorry for that. But this is just a good seal. As the vacuum is, when I was saying yesterday, as the vacuum sucks the lid down, the gasket needs to go somewhere, and that's out, and that's how you have that excess gasket. Now, just like on a snap lid, sometimes the lid shifts. It's just how it's been sat on the rim. Sometimes the jar is just, it's got that, 1/1000th of an inch out. And either or, a perfect one is where you've got some good gasket extending around. But just like in a snap lid, sometimes it shifts, and you're going to have sometimes a portion of the gasket that's flush with the lid and the rim of the jar. So again, you're not picking up from the neck, you are picking it up from the lid. And in this case, I'm literally picking it up by the gasket, and I'm just shaking it. And you can see, like, it's a heavy jar. And get this next one going. There we go. But that is a good sign when it's when it doesn't open easily. It's because this gasket is kind of holding it in still. But again, you can see it's in there. It's on. And I don't know if you can hear it. It almost sounds like it's got broken something in it, or it's broken. That's a sign of the vacuum, which is a sign of the seal. And I'll just lift this up just a pinch here. And same thing. Oh, this is a good example. This is a good example right here. You can see and feel, for that matter, that it's quite flush. I don't know if you can see it that well, but you can see moving along here, you can see that the gasket is quite protruding. But same thing, you just lift it up and give it a shake, and it is good to go. So these 4 jars of water are canned and ready for storage, and that's exactly where they're going to head to. Oops, there we go. That's exactly where these are going to be heading to, is downstairs into my cold room for storage. Now, the other things, so that's the water. That is the water. That is how you can water. Like I said, it's a really great test to make sure that you've got your technique down for your glass lids. You know what? If it doesn't seal, not a big deal. You just take it apart and do it again. Take a good look at the rim. You want to make sure that the rim of that jar, remember, you need it to be chip free. And even though I thought one of these might not, I think it was, I'm not sure even which one it was, but one of these jars had that chip in the rim, and I wasn't sure it was going to seal. Not a big deal. But again, this is a great way to test your canner after you have swapped your gasket out. If you're new to pressure canning, this is a great way to try canning. When you're learning a new technique like glass lids, you definitely want to can something. You know, if you don't seal it, it's not a big deal. You just try again. And I'll do another tutorial with the lids on the cream, but right now these are all set up. And again, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Help an Alberta girl keep a roof over her head and beer in the fridge and water in the cold room. See you next time.